Okay, so back Monday afternoon. So let's get into this first story. Okay, U.S. weapons meant for Ukraine end up in the hands of the Gulf Cartel. Let's get it. Fair use.
Miembro del Cártel del Golfo en Tamaulipas fue grabado portando una de las armas más exclusivas y poderosas, un javelin, que en teoría se vende únicamente al ejército y ha sido utilizado durante la invasión a Ucrania, por ejemplo. En el mercado negro, esa arma que lleva a su derecha, la otra es una K-47, a la derecha lleva esta arma que cuesta en el mercado negro unos entre 20,000 y 60,000 dólares. 20,000 y 60,000 dólares y cada disparo cuesta aproximadamente 30,000 dólares. El hombre que aparece en el video también porta un chaleco antibalas con las imágenes bordadas de un escorpión, un águila, un ave fénix, un triángulo con las palabras respeto, lealtad, disciplina y las siglas CDG al centro junto con el número 19. Alrededor se ve un círculo que dice valentía, fuerza e inmortalidad. Este es el javelin, usado, para que lo vea operar, usado durante un entrenamiento de fuerzas estadounidenses.
Boom, there you go.
Estas armas teóricamente exclusivas del ejército, pues como vemos, también las tienen.
I don't know what to say, man. I mean, I really can't say it's stupidity of the U.S. government. I can just say that they probably want, you know, they want chaos on a massive scale. That's what I could say. That you have, you know, criminals with high-tech weapons that can't be stopped unless you send in martial law. And I can't figure out a more genius plan, you know? Have the people so much in fear and suffering, and plus that you've restricted their gun rights, that they have to come to you as their savior for help, even though you orchestrated their suffering. Anti-tank missile launcher bound for Ukraine ends up in the hands of Mexican cartel. And, you know, the U.S. government knows that Ukraine soldiers have no idea what they're doing with those weapons. All right? And I wouldn't be surprised if the U.S. government themselves, they advise them, you know what? Why don't you just sell it on the black market, you know? Go do that. Go do that. All right? Because they have a plan that they're going to probably have martial law not only in the United States, but in other Western and third world countries. Countries that, you know, are not underdeveloped, but not a part of the West. Azucena University from Mileno TV in Mexico identified an advanced rocket launcher similar to the ones the U.S. has been shipping to Ukraine, being carried by a cartel militant. An anti-tank missile launcher bound for Ukraine has been spotted in the hands of Mexico's Gulf Cartel. It has been reported that a militant affiliated with the cartel was spotted carrying an advanced rocket launcher, the same type that the U.S. has been shipping to the Ukraine since 2018. The rocket launcher was identified as a Raytheon-made Javelin anti-tank missile system by Azucena University, a news anchor for Milenio TV. Now, you have to understand that both Republican and Democrats have been supporting Ukraine's neo-Nazi nation since 2014 under the Obama administration. Since the Russian invasion of Ukraine, more than 10,000 javelins have been shipped from the U.S. to fight against Vladimir Putin's war. Okay. Some online observers have said that the launcher shown in the TV report looks more like a Swedish-made AT-4 anti-armor system, which the U.S. has also shipped to Ukraine. The main difference between the two anti-tank weapons is that the Javelin fires a guided missile, while an AT-4 munition is unguided, and the AT-4 is meant for just one use. There have been multiple reports of arms winding up in the wrong hands since the U.S. and its allies began supplying Ukraine with weapons. Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari said last year that terrorists in the Lake Chad region of Africa were armed with weapons from Ukraine. Regrettably, the situation in the Sahel and the raging war in Ukraine serves as major sources of weapons and fighters that bolster the ranks of the terrorists in Lake Chad region, Buhari said in November 2022. In October 2022, Finland's national law enforcement agency, the National Bureau of Investigation, NBI, warned in October that arms meant for Ukraine had wound up in the hands of criminal gangs in Finland. The NBI also said that the weapons meant for Ukraine were found in Sweden, Denmark, and the Netherlands. Okay. Don't be surprised if they end up, in the hands of the IRA, Irish Republican Army. All right. Since, you got Ukrainian refugees over there, and there's been reports that the Ukrainian refugees over there aren't all refugees. Some of them are neo-Nazi soldiers. All right. It's going to get ugly, people. It is going to get ugly. Okay. Let's talk about Uganda right now and what they're dealing with for taking their stance against the Alphabet Mafia. Let's get into that. Okay. All right. Oh, here we are. All right.
Why doesn't everyone?
Why this is happening? All right.
Museveni has signed a controversial anti-LGBTQI plus bill into law. Activists have seen this move as a slap in the face of human rights. There have been calls for the president not to sign this bill into law. SABC News correspondent Michael Baleke is standing by to speak to us. Michael, thank you so much for your time. Let's start by talking about, the reaction to this on the ground, because some have seen it as a move that is among the world's harshest.
Hi there. Well, that will sound like that the bill or the law now is a very harsh law. Let me first say this. This law, the Anti-Homosexuality Act, the anti-homosexuality or same-sex relationships have been illegal in Uganda for quite some time under the old law. But this new law, of course, now criminalizes the act of homosexuality. And I would say that locally here, many Ugandans are excited about the president's decision, signing it into law, because it has been a big debate on the streets for religious leaders in churches, in mosques, and everywhere, even in parliament. People's representatives have been speaking loud and tough on homosexuality in Uganda because of the issues that had come up, that was being promoted in schools. It was being promoted, everywhere by
fair use, by the way,
by children in cartoons and all this and that. But I would say on the global scene, well, it has attracted heavy condemnation. We have seen the Speaker of Parliament lose her US visa immediately after the president signed the law. And then we have also seen now the Global Fund threatening to pull out of the HIV/AIDS tuberculosis war. We have seen PEPFAR, the U.S. president program on HIV. We have also seen the UNAIDS condemn this law. So on the international scene, it's a gross human right. But locally here in Uganda, people are excited about the decision of President Museveni.
I'm going to get to the activists in just a moment.
Notice that the U.S. is trying to punish them for not accepting this lifestyle. A lifestyle where, these people in America, is 2% of the population, but 40% of the child predators. 92% of children with same-sex guardians are abused. 58% have HIV cases. 82% have syphilis cases, and 37% suffer from anal cancer. This is what Uganda and many other nations are trying to prevent what's happening in the U.S. to happen in their country. Okay? That's what they're trying to prevent. If not, minimize it.
To your last point, how concerned is government about the pulling out? Because the White House had been threatening some economic repercussions when it comes to this particular decision. So how concerned are those lawmakers in Parliament about this?
There is a big concern. Uganda depends heavily on donor aid for its HIV/AIDS programs. For its not just HIV, but we're talking about tuberculosis. We're talking about
And the thing is like when you make that lifestyle okay, you will increase the HIV rate because they have more partners than straight people. That's what's not talked about.
number one killer, malaria.
And the domestic violence rate among same-sex female couples will go through the roof, which is not talked about. Also, what is also not talked about is the transformer women abusing the lesbians in the alphabet community. And when they speak up about it, they are silenced. And that is what also will go on if Uganda allows the alphabet lifestyle to reign in their country.
And all these funds for health, education, and all that come from donors, and they come from the US, they come from the European Union. So, of course, the government is worried. Almost about 80%, about 70% of these funds come from that to subsidize the life-saving drugs like antiretroviral drugs for HIV patients, tuberculosis drugs. These are very quite expensive drugs that a local person cannot afford. So the government is really concerned.
And this is what the Western nations, like United States and many others, are trying to break Uganda with. But little do they know that Uganda is very smart in what they are doing, and many other countries, or African countries, are doing the same. Okay? And hopefully it will spread throughout the continent to stand up against the US and other Western powers that wants them to embrace a lifestyle that does not bring life, but death. Now on to the next story. Right now, we are going to talk about the AI, artificial intelligence. Okay, and we're going to talk about how it's being manipulated. Okay. Go.
Teaches itself. The benefits of this are incredible. What happens, however, if we take that same system and we put it in charge of weapons, and we tell it, okay, Mr. AI, In the event there's a problem with Russia or Saudi Arabia or Iran, we're going to leave it to you to determine when to initiate, let's say, a weapon system or fire mission or artillery or to commence a war. That's not going to happen, is it? Why not? What happens if the police one day, if jurors, if things that we normally involve ourselves with is turned over to this machine that doesn't have emotion, that doesn't understand judgment, that doesn't have, let's say, for example, your son or daughter is in some type of a competition, something that doesn't involve itself with scores, softball, baseball, but let's say something involving dancing or cheerleading or something that involves something artistic. You know and I know there is going to be this move to say, forget these judges who can be bought and biased and old-fashioned. Let's turn it over to Mr. AI. How do you teach style, custom, tradition, flow, enthusiasm? How do you take those things which we have, which granted are very, they're shortcomings, but judgment, feelings, compassion, love, empathy, the traditional, oh, look, here's a fan favorite. Oh, I mean, things that we humans do, which I think are pretty good. How do you machine learn that? How is AI supposed to do that? Or maybe maybe those aren't good anymore. I mean, maybe those are a problem. They've been asking, Scotty, for the longest time, why don't we have robots or these devices work in professional baseball? Who cares about umpires? Let's make sure we get exactly a strike. And they've said no, because you're going to remove the human element, which means mistakes. So what do you want, Scotty? Do you want precision, or do you want compassion and judgment and art and taste and the plus and minuses that go with that?
Well, that is an interesting debate because, right now, Lionel, we've had this conversation. It feels like everybody cares about feelings and we need to be sensitive. Of course, that's only to certain sides of an issue. Be sensitive. We need to understand how kids are feeling. We don't give grades anymore because it might hurt the kids' feelings. And yet the exact opposite is you have this large push for artificial intelligence.
The thing is, though, I mean, you don't really need artificial intelligence for this. All you need to do is just have a stern mind and just be like, you didn't study hard enough, you got an F. There's only first place, and then there's second place, and then there's third place. You do not get a participation trophy in life. Life does not work that way. It's about winning or losing. And if you fall, get back up and try again. Fall, get back up and try again. All this is to try to remove the human element of trial and error, of bumping your head, getting back up, and working at things. When we do things like this, AI is really a shortcut. Using things that are shortcuts, okay? Just listening to people who don't have much experience in certain things to talk about certain things. Like we could take, for example, dating coaches. All right. They lack the experience. Because it's kind of like AI. You're taking, excuse me, you're taking advice from people who do not know anything about dating. The human element of experience. You bump your head, make mistakes, get back up, get better at it. Okay. Instead of learning about that, through trial and error, you want to take the easy way out and listen to somebody who really you don't know if they have any good experience. Okay, when it comes to life and the opposite sex, it is the same thing with the AI. Okay, because guess what? With artificial intelligence, you're having people build artificial, like robot women, dolls that would cure the loneliness of some men who are undesirable. When in reality, these men don't want to work to improve themselves, to be better men, to work on their shortcomings, deal with the issues, do away with the toxic parts of them that will make them repulsive to the opposite sex. No, we want to do AI. We want to build women that talk and move and act like women, but are not real women. And there's no real long-term positive reinforcement with that. It's like you take away the goal of striving to work to be better at being in relationships. Okay. And with that human element gone, you're making humans very complacent, very selfish, very entitled, very spoiled. And that is what's happening with artificial intelligence. And it's also going to be, as you've seen, taking away jobs.
And it's interesting that you bring this up to practicality, because a robot lawyer was actually pulled from being able to argue a traffic ticket in court. Now, the creator, Joshua Browder, actually said he created Do Not Pay to bring fair legal advice to people who couldn't afford lawyers. And his goal was for the AI lawyer to one day argue cases all in front of the Supreme Court. Once again, black and white facts. Now he's actually facing threats from state bar prosecutors in a class action lawsuit.
Good.
You're a lawyer. Are you for this robot lawyer or on the side of the Bar Association in regards to this case?
Let's say traffic tickets. You don't argue a traffic case ticket. There's no argument. You're not saying, was I or was I not speeding? Scotty, let's take this. What if I represent you in a traffic ticket? By the way, those are some of the most interesting cases of all. And I say, uh-oh, you see that judge? Yeah, don't wear that. Bring your kids. Take your ring off. Look impoverished. Show up late, show up early. Make sure you get on the docket before noon because he tends to tipple. I'm throwing in factors that nobody, you think Mr. Robot's going to know this? And when I want you to look the judge in the eye. And
the robot may know this because the robot will have access to a vast amount of information, and even this program, and will look up, human behaviors and stuff like that, and facts and data and, people's bank accounts and work history and track record that can be documented to figure out if a person's pulling a fast one.
And I want you to say yes or no, sir, he loves this. And you've got a problem with. Now, I'm throwing in factors which have nothing to do with yes or no, speeding or not. There are things, I'm sorry, there's judgment. Do you think that if you're going to speak before a jury, do you think if I'm trying to explain to a jury, for example, why this brain damaged child is different than this brain damaged older person? Or, I mean, there are gradients. I know it sounds brutal to say these things, but in some cases it's terrific. Let me throw one at you. You ready? Here's a curveball. Let's assume that I have this doll that I'm able to make. And this doll is incredible. It looks like an infant. Their eyes actually can change irises and can look pained or interested. I can change skin temperature, rubefaction, rubescence, blushing. I can have little horripilation, goosebumps, you name it. You'll look at this thing and you'll think, this is a baby. Now, what happens if I then teach this baby how to recoil and do things? And what happens if somebody decides to do something nefarious with it? Are you going to tell this person they can't? But he says, no, this is not a human being. Is it? This is an artificial intelligence human being, sort of. Are we going to then, by virtue of this, like we did with Sophie, grant human traits to it, human protections? Can you murder an AI robot? It's going to change everything.
Absolutely. It's going to definitely make a very already blurry line almost obsolete.
Also, the fact of there have been people, companies have been trying to manufacture dolls for PDF files, thinking that will satisfy their perversion. When in reality, how to deal with these people is they have to be locked up, and they have to stay locked up until there's documented proof that they can be let out in the outside without harming kids. Personally, I think that they have to stay locked up. Once again, it's becoming some sort of cheat code for people who can take the easy way out instead of working on what's wrong with them.
Yes,
Lionel, don't go
indeed.
anywhere. Because when we return, we're going to continue this
Okay. So that's basically what I wanted to talk about with that one. All right. Get the gist of that. But there's more. There's more. All right. Basically, AI is going to be used for war. Okay. Fair use, by the way, fair use.
Good? No? It sounds scary and bad? Yeah. Yeah. Hey, have I...
Oh, man. Sorry about this real quick.
Hey, what if AI controlled the military? Does that sound cool and good? No? It sounds scary and bad? Yeah. Yeah. Hey, have I got a technology product for you? Say hello to Artificial Intelligence Platform, the hot new AI systems integration software from Palantir, billionaire Peter Thiel's data analytics company. The marketing video for Artificial Intelligence Platform, or AIP, promises that military clients can integrate large language models and other AI systems into closed data networks that can safely, legally, and ethically access classified information. Yay! The demo imagines a near-future world where an operator sitting behind a keyboard gets notified that there's an enemy incursion.
Doesn't this sound like Terminator 3? Yeah, let's keep going.
Near friendly troops. Using a ChatGPT style interface, it asks, "Hey AI, what do you think your best guess is about what that might be?" Not satisfied with the answer, it uses the AI to launch an MQ-9 Reaper drone to go and take some pictures. What's that, AIP? You say that enemy you noticed is actually a T-80 tank, workhorse of the Russian military? That's scary. What do you suggest we do? In Palantir's demo, AIP helpfully generates 3 different battle plans, all of them involving destroying the tank, and then sends them on to the operator's commanding officer for review and selection. It then helps coordinate the units, make sure that all of them have the ammunition they need, and generates new battle plans based on new input from the operator and their commanding officer. Again, what AIP is selling here is not a chatbot itself. It's actually using 3 different large language models, all of them fine-tuned in their own special way and done up with custom plugins. Palantir's pitch is that AIP can integrate all of these systems in a legal and ethical way. It does not attempt to address the broader questions of, what happens when an AI hallucinates, makes big mistakes, as we've often seen these large language models do, and what that might mean in a battlefield situation, where an AI hallucinating might mean the difference between life and death.
Feel like I'm living in the episode of The Boys. Oh boy. Yeah. It's out there, man, but hey, it's real life. What could I tell you? Real life, man. But let's see what Alex Karp has to say on this situation. And you never guess what country is going to be using this AI. Here we go.
One of his friends was quoted in the FT as saying that Alex is allergic to simplicity. And you were also quoted in that piece as saying, the country that wins the AI battles of the future will set the international order. So you're in the right place today to discuss all this. I wondered if we could start by you telling us what role AI is playing in the war in Ukraine, and to the extent you can, what role is Palantir playing?
Well, first of all, very happy to be here. Thank you for that kind introduction. Forward it to my relatives who will be happy to know I'm so accomplished. You know, that quote, just as a reference, I think was from 3 years ago, something like that. And, you know, when I was saying this, and when we got involved in what's now called AI in parts of the DoD, unnamed parts, because Silicon Valley's view of technology was please send it to the adversaries and send the carcinogens to America and the allies. You know, if you're getting really rich, why should everyone have a good life too? We took a different path, which was, and so when they abandoned the U.S. government's efforts to build AI in the war context, we had a lot of trepidation about getting involved because this was like 5-6 years ago, and AI, as it was until a couple years ago, was really a bumper sticker for fraudsters, half fraudsters, and people selling snake oil. And when you're in software, you have to be very, very careful not to be proximate to that because it all looks like a PowerPoint. Now, I could hand out unnamed companies where I know the software doesn't exist, and they would have a PowerPoint largely copied. They would figure out what we're doing and print it up. It'd look better. The people pitching it to you will look nicer, better. In the American context, they have whiter teeth. In this context, they have a better swim style or something that's very appealing. And so we got involved in the digitalization of warfare a number of years ago. At the same time, we were already still maintaining products that we had built largely for the West, but particularly useful in Europe because you have an environment where data protection and anti-terror work has to go hand in hand. And that gave us an architecture for understanding how an enterprise would work with segmented data. So you just have a huge, typically everyone's excited about AI because it's not a joke, it's clearly transformative, and you're seeing the results of OpenAI in the consumer internet context. I would maintain that the history of technology from certainly in the last 100 years is things coming from the military going to consumer. And that's also what I think primarily actually has happened in AI, where, and again, our role in Ukraine has been widely discussed. Won't say that much about it, but as a matter of theory,
helping neo-Nazis.
The old way of targeting where you don't use where algorithms aren't used is clearly a failure. And if you go into battle with old school technology, even if you're spending $65 billion a year and you're highly accomplished warfighters like Russia, and you have an adversary that knows how to install and implement digitalized targeting and AI, you obviously are at a massive disadvantage. But which the world heard, and that's why there's a lot of interest in AI. But what's very interesting is the way we discuss AI in public networks, consumer internet, doesn't actually translate to private networks. So if you're doing digitalization or AI on healthcare records or in the context of war, you have issues of, in the war fighting context, you have, who makes the decision under what condition, who takes responsibility, who does the after-action report. If the AI makes a decision, who's responsible for that? If before war, you have the ethics of war, who starts the war, under what conditions? During the war, what targets are taken out, what kind of targets can be taken out, what is every country has an idea of safe harbor, i.e. targets you can't take out, targets that need special authorization, targets that need different kinds of action reports. You have different kinds of segmentation inside data sources. So without going into any details in the Ukraine or other countries, you have very different data sources. They're structured in a different way. You have security issues. If you're working at war, as everyone in this room would know, you can't supply all your data sources, i.e. your asset sources, your human ingredient, to everyone on the war field, even by proxy through an algorithm, because that can be deciphered. So how do you run algorithms and run targeting packages where these things are paramount so the adversary doesn't immediately know what you're doing, how you're doing it, and can replicate it? And then in the civilian context, this is a heavily regulated environment, for example, in Europe. You can't just run interjurisdictional AI on data sets in healthcare, legal, pharmaceuticals, and any of the interjurisdictional AI is, for lots of good reasons, would not be allowed legally, or in my view, ethically. So how do you make the AI or digitalization work in that context? That's something we've spent the last 5 years building. And what's super interesting now is it was a joke. And when I was giving you this quote, I largely just got ridiculed by my academic friends. But I think it's pretty obvious to people in this room, not as obvious maybe to people outside this room, but the ability to dominate the war battlefield on our ethical terms, meaning where we can control who does what and under what circumstances, will define who writes the law and how it's interpreted. Now, this maybe is less controversial in Europe. It is particularly controversial, I think, in academic circles in which I lingered. But I view it as a banality and a fact. And certainly the fact that AI is not an incrementally better technology like maybe mortars and tanks where one country has a slight advantage. It is completely logarithmic and nonlinear. And so, yeah, that's a lot. But
all right. So just to drill down in that, if I, with my journalistic superpowers, will summarize that as saying what you're saying is that when we talk about wars, we talk about kind of mortars and tanks, but in fact, it's data processing is now the new superpower that is enabling the Ukrainians to more than match the Russians.
Well, yeah, you say, yeah. It used to be that something like an analytic package plus.
All right, I gotta cut it short there. Move on to the next part of this. That they're trying now to use that against Russia. But I don't hear anything about the hallucinations part of it. What are you going to do about when, have you fixed the bugs when it comes to those types of problems? That when you're in war, can the soldier trust the AI not to flip out, not to take him out while he's trying to take out Russian soldiers? That is yet to be discussed. Okay. Let's hear more about this. Okay, let's hear what Eric Schmidt has to say about AI and war. Google Exit has to say about this.
All of us, not just politicians, not just people who are in the public eye, artificial intelligence, the technology is moving so fast, it can baffle even the people creating it. Its potential impact on everything from national security to your job has the heads of the industry warning of the risk of their own creations. They're going so far as to ask Congress to regulate them before it's too late.
My worst fears are that we, the field, the technology, the industry, cause significant harm to the world.
We have built machines that are like bulls in a china shop, powerful, reckless, and difficult to control.
So we think that AI should be regulated at the point of risk, essentially, and that's the point at which technology meets society.
Pick whatever movie analogy you'd like. The Terminator, Frankenstein, iRobot, The Matrix, basically any plot where machines outsmart and outpace human beings. It is becoming a reality. Science fiction is actually turning into fact. The discussion about AI went down at a historic Senate hearing today. The panel looked at the benefits and serious risks of this advanced technology, like image manipulation or election disinformation that can potentially sway voters. There are AI threats to democracy, to the economy, to jobs, to privacy, social media, art, the justice system, even war. Lawmakers made very clear they see the potential threat. Senator Richard Blumenthal actually kicked off the hearing with a deepfake recording of his own voice.
And now for some introductory remarks.
Too often,
we have seen what happens when technology outpaces regulation. The unbridled exploitation of personal data, the proliferation of disinformation. The remarks were written by ChatGPT when it was asked how I would open this hearing.
Joining me now is former Google CEO and chairman Eric Schmidt, who is now an investor in an AI startup. Is Tari, is that how I say it?
Anthropic.
Anthropic. My bad. All right. Okay, let's start here. What are the risks? We just saw a senator using it for something that it seems innocuous. It's your own voice, but it was something nice. But what are the real risks here?
Well, first, 15 seconds on the extraordinary benefits of AI. An AI tutor, an AI doctor, helping everyone get smarter, globally available, lifting people from poverty, solving climate change, accelerating drug.
Doctors without compassion and just have the knowledge are not very good doctors to give comfort to a patient. This is where AI falls short.
Drug discovery. My industry is crazy over this stuff. The power and the innovation that will occur that's been unleashed in this last round is phenomenal. At the same time, we're also very concerned about potential risks. As these models get larger, and larger means in terms of the scale of training, $100 million of cost of training, they take on properties that are concerning. The ability, for example, to change from one media to another, such as voice casting and things like that. Imagine a situation where you could ask it to do cyber attacks. Yeah. It has learned how to do this, not because it was programmed to do it, but because it encountered the information. And what the industry does today is it puts guardrails on these systems. We're very concerned that those guardrails need to get set right and they need to be applied everywhere.
All right, let me ask you about the sort of potential of that, because a lot of this sounds like science fiction to a lot of people when you start thinking about the possibilities. And you named a lot of the good things it could do. Languages, it could probably help you pick up languages very
Translate
quickly.
languages,
Translate, right?
all that.
But even if we don't get to these sort of science fiction moments in history, how much does this technology change the everyday landscape, our work, our home, everything?
Well, some of my friends write documents and they say, edit this. They send the document to GPT-4 in this case, and it produces a better version, right? That's an amplifier. So in most cases, this technology it will make you quicker, more efficient, smarter, a better communicator, whatever it is that you're doing. The same will be true for physicists and chemists and teachers and poets and so forth. That's all good. The issue, of course, is that the same evil person, if they were evil, gets an amplification of their ability to spread evil. A good example here would be that in 2016, the Russians used a series of people to create fake identities and flood the zone, right, in 2016 to try to affect the election. This has occurred over and over again in other democracies. We're going to have one heck of a year in 2024 because today those tools are available to a single lone bad person who can use that to generate fake identities, fill an entire network of false information that looks legit, right? That spreads through social media, and off we go.
I do want to challenge you a little bit on just the idea of just an evil person. Here's the thing that a lot of people worry about when I talk to just regular folks that don't know a lot about AI. Insurance companies, businesses, trying to use your information against you through AI's brain, basically. And that is a huge concern. You talked about the guardrails, and you feel like those need to be set in stone. But social media companies set rules, right? If they're the ones that are like, you set the rules, you know how this works, that didn't work so well with social media. That didn't work so well. And the government comes in and they're behind the 8 ball. They're not sure how the technology works themselves. And it's already taken off and created a myriad of problems.
Well, social media is largely not regulated.
That's right.
And you see the consequence. And I think most of us believe that we missed that opportunity. Some of the senators today in the hearing said the same thing. There's an agreement, I think, between the industry and the government that we don't want to repeat some of those mistakes, but we want to get the good stuff. And what you're seeing now in the US government is they're beginning to think about it. This is a good process. It's not obvious exactly how the regulations will come. I have my own proposals, Sam has his, other people have different ideas. This technology will be regulated in some way because of its potential dangers. Just don't regulate it out of existence, in which case we won't get the benefits.
Can I just ask you lastly, when it comes to war, because we talked about the fact that it can be used in war, is it more dangerous than, for example, nuclear war, the way we think of conventional war, the worst case scenario?
Well, nuclear war is horrific, and any sort of large nuclear conflagration would destroy the world as we know it. You can imagine this technology, for example, active cyber attacks, attack a whole country, do it until everybody's dead, and you can imagine that scenario. You can also imagine the scenario where you say, I want to kill 1 million people, show me a biological path to do it. These are the dangers that we have to make sure are not happening. We need to put guardrails and limits. People are working on these problems.
I'm sorry, but that has already been. There is no guardrail for that. There was no guardrail for that in the past. There probably won't be any guardrail for that in the future. That's how I see it. It's just not a reality. All right. They acting like they haven't done this before, but whatever. Okay. So, guess what? When I've always said, what I've always said is, you know, it's not just the Democrats that are warmongers. All right. And you'll see why when we talk about this person right here, Nikki Haley.
Ambassador Nikki Haley, former U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations and Governor of South Carolina. Brand new book. It is excellent. If you have a daughter, or if you want to be inspired yourself, if you want something done, leadership lessons from bold women. Ambassador, welcome back.
Thanks so much. Great to be with you.
So this plays perfect for the release of your book, The Emergence of a Female Prime Minister in Italy. You surprised about the blowback?
No, because there's nothing that scares, libs more than a conservative female, a strong conservative female. I mean, you can see this, it's what they did to Liz Truss. It's now what they're doing to her. I mean, this is what they're scared of. But at the end of the day, they're calling her a fascist. She's not a fascist. She's denied that. She's denied that she's pro-Russia, all of these things. And so they're just labeling her with things. And I think we should wait and see what she does.
Liz Truss also takes over as Prime Minister. Theresa May was 2 cycles ago. Your thoughts about her?
Well, I think she's strong. I've met her. I was with her probably six weeks ago, and we were talking about foreign policy. She's strong. She's got a spine. I was disappointed that she backed off of the tax cuts that she had initially proposed, but she's tough. She's gonna push through, and I think she'll do well.
She wanted to cut taxes on the rich, cut tax for the rich, because those are the ones propel the economy. That's a conservative agenda. She got blowback and she backed off. It stays at 45%.
That's right. In a time where she really needed to do something to wake up the economy, that's what she tried to do. But of course, she got all of the heat, which is what happened to Margaret Thatcher as well. But she did not take the U-turn.
Who's also in your book, and Golda Meir and Amelia Earhart, 10 strong women. Have you thought about you being another somebody who emerges as a leader maybe of this country? When are you going to consider give yourself a yes or no on running for president?
I mean, all eyes are on November, and we're focused on House, Senate, gubernatorial races. I don't have to worry about it till probably after January. That's when I'll start looking at it.
Real quick on Ukraine. The Ukrainians have picked up 122 different villages and provinces back from Russia. The President of the United States comes out and says, I believe Vladimir Putin, it could be Armageddon. What's the point of saying that?
Completely counterproductive, because not only are you going and trying to instill fear in Americans, but think about what Putin thinks when he sees that. He loves that that's what he's saying. What we need to do is be measured. We need to be calm. We need to understand that, is Putin dangerous? Yes. But take the precautions that we need to do to actually create deterrence. That means when Putin goes and talks about nuclear threats, you go to China and Iran and everybody that's supporting him and saying, are you okay with that conversation? Are you okay with him talking like that? And you get international pressure on them. Putin also knows that if there's something he does, and this is what Biden should be saying, is if he uses a nuclear arm in any way whatsoever, there will be hell to pay. That's what you say. You don't say this is going to be army.
What makes you any different from Biden? Biden wants to go to war. You want to go to war. It may be a threat, but it's still in the direction of going to war. You're no more different than a Democrat.
And there would be hell to pay. We wouldn't put troops on the ground. We'd go and we'd do missile strikes. We'd make sure we hit Russia where it hurt, and they would retreat.
Beijing, this big story.
They're not going to retreat. Russia is sitting on black gold. They have people willing to back them. They got people, Japan was once on the Western, hate Putin train, but then they wised up and they had to buy oil from Putin. Okay? So I don't see where you going with this. I really don't see it. Okay? What sense do you make? Counterproductive, but you want to make a threat to Russia that is literally sitting on gold, black gold, and resources. Already they have BRICS, which will soon make the American dollar a thing of the past.
That has emerged of China infiltrating into America. They've recruited leading scientists, according to reports from top U.S. nuclear laboratories, to the tune of 162. In and around our nation's secrets for a number of years. Your thoughts on this exposure? You told me before this segment, this is just the beginning. If you wonder how they're stealing our stuff, this is how they're stealing our stuff.
Let's not forget that China's buying up farmland too, buying up meat processing plants. Let's not forget the U.S. government owes China a debt. Let's not forget China has their own police in the United States, police stations. So I also forget that U.S. government is for some reason. I won't talk about that. But the reality is, everybody better buckle up, because the Republicans aren't going to save you, and the Democrats aren't going to save you, because they both want war with Putin. The American people be damned. It's basically what it is.
We make it so easy. When I was at the United Nations, I had a group of people that did nothing but watch China's every move. When they wanted to put language in resolutions, we pulled it out. When they wanted to run for a position, we stopped them. What we have to do now is universities have got to stop taking Chinese money. We've got to look at all of these research areas. You cannot have any Chinese experts coming in here or Chinese, basically they're on a...
Does that make any sense if they're buying up all the land? They got they're already owning property here. It's a little too late. Sorry, man, but this seems like nonsense. Just utter nonsense, man. What's going on here? That's what it seems like. The nuts. Absolutely insane nonsense she's spewing. Republican presidential candidate explained that the only way to prevent war was to send a message by fighting one. Allowing Ukraine to lose to Russia on the battlefield will unleash world war, according to Republican presidential candidate Nikki Haley. The South Carolina governor told a town hall audience in Iowa on Sunday that arming Kyiv was all about preventing war by sending a message to the U.S. rivals. When Ukraine wins, that sends a message to China with Taiwan. It sends a message to Iran that wants to build a bomb. It sends a message to North Korea testing ballistic missiles. It sends a message to Russia that it's over. Yet Russia and other countries are part of BRICS. It is in the best interest of America. It is in the best interest of our national security for Ukraine to win. We have to see this through. We have to finish it, she said. This is a Republican saying this. This is not a Democrat. Regarding how the war might finish, Haley was less forthcoming. It would end in a day if Russia would pull out, she suggested. If Ukraine pulls out, then we're looking at world war. To prevent that, she explained, Kyiv needs weapons, lots of them. You mean the weapons that are ending up in Mexico and in Africa? A win for Ukraine is a win for all of us because tyrants tell us exactly what they're going to do. And in Ukraine, they kill people who are journalists telling the truth. Yeah, it's a win for everybody, helping a neo-Nazi dictatorship. Haley continued claiming Russia said Poland and the Baltics are next. Should Ukraine fall, if that happens, we're looking at a world war, she repeated. While much has been written about the possibility of a Russian invasion of Poland or the Baltic states, even most U.S. experts admit that they're unlikely. Invading any of the countries would trigger Article 5 NATO's Mutual Defense Clause, turning up conflict may have described as a proxy war between Moscow and Brussels into a direct war between nuclear powers. Haley has been quick to set herself apart on foreign policy matters from Republican frontrunner Donald Trump, who quipped earlier this year that it was the U.S., not Russia, that needed regime change. From challenger Ron DeSantis, who downplayed the conflict in Ukraine as a territorial dispute. I'm not voting. I'm so glad I'm not voting. During the town hall, she again scoffed at the notion of remaining neutral in the conflict, insisting that this is a war about freedom, and it's one we have. Woo! Wow. Haley served as the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations under Trump. She made no secret of her interventionist leanings, even announcing an unexpected round of sanctions against Russia that the White House then had to retract. She has urged the Biden administration to give in to the Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky's demands for F-16 fighter jets for months and impose even more sanctions, insisting Washington is too soft on Moscow. Let's read the comments here. U.S. government should enroll all her family members in the military and ship them off to war. See how she thinks about World War III, warmonger. Here's another one. Nikki Haley, another insane warmonger from Washington. I really wonder if there's a single individual in his right mind in the U.S. thinking clearly right now. Issue her with a rifle and send her off to put her money where her mouth is. Would somebody translate for what Niet means? Miscarried and ill-conceived female predators like her are the reason and epitome of which is fundamentally wrong in politics. She rides the crazy train. Nikki Haley just lost my vote. Strap her onto the top of a Minuteman missile. She's probably enjoy it since I'm sure she used to wearing. Whoa. Send Haley to the Russian front. People like this are not useful. Dumb Nazi collaborator didn't get the memo about World War III has been declared some time ago. Remember, just one tiny fact. Nikki Haley was Trump's choice as an ambassador to the UN. Okay. Yeah, man. Let me just read this other article right here. Ukrainian counteroffensive attempt failed. Okay, look, man. People, the citizens, unfortunately, those are the only ones with sense, want this war, they want peace. They want this war to end, but on peaceful terms. They don't want World War III. I don't want World War III. Okay? But the people in office, Republican and Democrat, are proving once again that they don't serve the people. They serve other interests. the global elite. That's who they serve. Ukrainian counteroffensive attempt failed, Russian mod. Kiev's botched attack took place in the southern part of Donetsk region, according to the ministry. Ukrainian forces attempted to mount a large-scale offensive in the southern part of the Donetsk People's Republic. Russia's defense ministry claimed on Monday. In a statement, the ministry said that on Sunday, Ukrainian troops attempted to attack Russian forces using 6 mechanized and 2 tank battalions. However, it added that as a result of the actions of the East military grouping, as well as owing to airstrikes and artillery fire near the settlements of Nykishonye and Novodorivka, both of which are some 100 kilometers west of the Donetsk, the Ukrainian forces incurred significant losses. As a result of the botched attack, in the last 24 hours, Ukraine lost up to 300 service members, 16 tanks, 26 armored, and 14 ordinary vehicles, the statement read. The enemy failed to accomplish its goals, the ministry concluded. The ministry's statement comes after earlier in the day, it said that Ukraine has tried to break through Russia's defenses in 5 sections of the front line in Donbass, using its strategic reserves, but failed to do so. Ukrainian officials have for months promised to launch a counteroffensive, which initially was expected to happen in the spring. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky has on numerous occasions said that Kyiv was ready for the push, but still needs a bit more time in order to receive more Western weapons. Ukraine's general staff provided no comment on the counteroffensive, saying only there had been 29 combat clashes in Donetsk and neighboring Lugansk regions in the last 24 hours. Ukraine's Center for the Strategic Communications also failed to address Moscow's statement head-on, but accused Russia of attempting to spread false information in order to demoralize Ukrainians. No, they're trying to warn you. Listen, we want you to surrender. We don't want to fight you anymore. We know we could kill you. We want to end this on peaceful terms. Unfortunately, all the sane people, all right, are not running the country right now. Okay? Because to the United States, to the Republican Democratic Party, this is a sport. Okay? To Western nations that are in this, that want to ride this crazy train, this is a sport to them. It's a game. All right? Ever heard of that old saying, toy soldiers? That's what it is. That is what it is. Reading the comments, it's like a game and a sport, ups and downs through the game by either side, but wait for the end result that counts. Should start a betting game. I put $1 on Ukraine to win and $99 on Russia to win. All right? MAGA Trump says a win for Russia is a blow against globalism, and that is a victory for all humanity. This American is rooting for Putin. I'm not rooting for Putin, but I'm not rooting for neo-Nazis either. Just giving the news. All right? This technique of NATO disarming the European Union is a bit deadly for Ukraine. Can't believe Russia's MOD thinks this was a counteroffensive. Woo! This is sad, man. But this is how bad it is, man. This is how bad it is. Right? Ukraine is not winning. All right? I just read that article, just hit people in the face with, life, to smell the coffee. Ukraine's not winning. Need to surrender. Okay? People need to go to their congressmen, write to them, write to Biden, write to whoever in government that has the power to cancel this, to stop this war. Stop this crap now. Basically it. But let's talk about the Saudis right now. Let's get into that. Fair use, by the way.
Everyone loves a good surprise, maybe a nice birthday party or a gift. But surprises are best left to our personal lives. In geopolitics, the premium is on stability and predictability. Boring, but necessary. But Saudi Arabia missed the memo. This weekend, the kingdom decided to slash oil output. They will produce 1 million fewer barrels in July. But that's not the full story. Saudi Arabia is going solo here. The oil cartel, OPEC Plus, has stuck to its previous cuts. They're not increasing cuts. Only Saudi Arabia has announced new cuts. Listen in to their energy minister.
As we have done in April, whereby the countries that had agreed to do the voluntary cuts have extended that voluntary cuts to end of 24. And I would have to call it the Saudi lollipop, which is 1 million barrel of reduction for the start that starts at the 1st of July. And that million is also extendable.
Interesting choice of words. Oil is arguably the most important commodity of our times. Dropping surprise bombs in that market is certainly not a Saudi lollipop, as he puts it. So why is Riyadh doing it? To prop up prices. In the months after Russia's invasion, oil was booming. Let's look at Brent crude. It's an oil index. In June 2022, Brent crude was $112. That's $112 per barrel. And now, $76 per barrel. It had fallen to nearly $70 by late May. Now that's bad news for the Saudi kingdom. Around 50% of their economy is built on oil. So what do? They reduce oil production to boost prices. It's economics 101. There are two ways to increase prices. You either boost the demand or you reduce the supply. Saudi Arabia went for the latter. They reduced the supply. They need higher prices to fund their grand diversification plans. But how high? The International Monetary Fund says $80 per barrel. That's what they need. At that price, Riyadh will be comfortable. But why isn't that happening? Why is that rise not happening organically? Because the global economy is not growing fast enough. Look at any industry. Travel has not reached pre-pandemic levels. Neither has factory output. So the demand for oil continues to be stagnant. Prices are not racing towards $100 a barrel. They're falling towards $70. Hence, the surprise announcement by Saudi Arabia. But there's a flip side to it. Higher oil prices can fuel inflation. That's what happened in 2022. Central banks have been raising interest rates to keep prices under control. They were just about to hit the pause button. But if oil rallies again, all bets are off. So what scenarios are we looking at? The most optimistic one is this. There is a grand economic recovery in the second half of this year. Factory production rises, people start flying again, so the demand for oil rises organically. That would bring stability to the market. If not, there could be trouble. Rising oil prices will worsen the cost of living crisis. How is India placed to tackle this problem? Well, there is some good news. We're not as dependent on Saudi Arabia. Around 40% of India's oil imports now come from Russia. That's more than Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Iraq combined. And since Russia has not announced any cuts yet, the impact on India will be limited. Having said that, it's not all rosy. 85% of India's oil is imported. New Delhi is ultimately at OPEC's mercy, like all non-oil producers.
Yeah, man. It's getting real. It is getting real. That's the thing about Saudi Arabia, man. I mean, they're not to play with. They got the world at their fingertips. Okay? Nobody messes with Saudi Arabia. Nobody. Saudi Arabia is slashing oil supply to mean higher prices for gas for U.S. drivers. Frankfurt, Germany. Saudi Arabia will reduce how much oil it sends to the global economy, taking a unilateral step to prop up the sagging price of crude after two previous cuts to supply by major producing countries in the OPEC Plus alliance failed to push oil higher. The Saudi cut of 1 million barrels per day to start in July comes as other OPEC Plus producers agreed in the meeting in Vienna to extend earlier production cuts through the next year. Calling the reduction a lollipop, Saudi energy minister Abdulaziz bin Salman said at news conference that we wanted to ice the cake. Lollipop? Wow. It's like calling people who have to survive on this peasants. Like, it's not that bad. It's not that bad. But it is bad if you're, if you got to depend on this to get around. He said the cut could be extended and that the group will do whatever is necessary to bring stability to this market. The new cut would likely push oil prices in the short term, but the impact after that would depend on whether the Saudi Arabia decides to extend it, said George Leon, Senior Vice President of Oil Markets Research at Rystad Energy. The move provides a price floor because the Saudis can play with the voluntary cut as much as they like, he said. The slump in oil prices has helped U.S. drivers fill their tanks more cheaply and gave consumers worldwide some relief from inflation. Gas is not going to become cheaper, said Leon. If anything, it will become marginally more expensive. That the Saudis felt another cut was necessary underlines the uncertain outlook for demand for fuel in the months ahead. There are concerns about economic weakness in the U.S. and Europe, while China's rebound from COVID-19 restrictions have been less robust than many had hoped. Saudi Arabia, the dominant producer in the OPEC oil cartel, was one of several members that agreed on a surprise cut of 1.6 million barrels per day in April. The kingdom's share was 500,000. That followed OPEC Plus announcing in October that it would slash 2 million barrels per day, angering U.S. President Joe Biden by threatening higher gasoline prices a month before the midterm elections. All told, OPEC Plus has now dropped production on paper by 4.6 million barrels a day, but some countries can't produce their quotas, so the actual reduction is around 5.3 million barrels per day, or over 3% of global supply. Previous cuts gave little lasting boost to oil prices. International benchmark Brent crude climbed as high as $87 per barrel, but has given up its post-cuts gains and been loitering below $75 per barrel. In recent days, U.S. crude had recently dipped below $70. That had helped U.S. drivers kicking off the summer travel season, while with prices at the pump averaging $3.55. Down $1.02 from a year ago. According to Auto Club AAA, falling energy prices has also helped inflation in the 20 European countries that use the euro dropped to the lowest level since before Russia invaded Ukraine. The Saudis need sustained high oil revenue to fund ambitious development projects aimed at diversifying the country's economy. The International Monetary Fund estimates the kingdom sends $8.90 per barrel to meet its envisioned spending commitments, which include a planned $500 billion futuristic desert city project called NEOM. Wow. So they're just spending money on these projects while other countries are just suffering. And you can't really say much about it because they can do what they want. The U.S. recently replenished its strategic petroleum reserve after Biden announced the largest release from National Reserve in American history last year, and an indicator that the U.S. officials may be less worried about the OPEC cuts than in months past. While oil producers like Saudi Arabia needed revenue to fund their state budgets, they've also had to take into account the impact of higher prices on oil-consuming countries. Oil prices that go too high can fuel inflation, sapping consumer purchasing power, and pushing central banks like the U.S. Federal Reserve toward further interest rate hikes that can slow economic growth. The Saudi production cut and any increase to oil prices could add to the profits that are helping Russia pay for its war against Ukraine. Russia has found new oil customers in India, China, and Turkey, and Western sanctions designed to limit Moscow's crucial energy income. Amid that, however, high crude prices risk complicating trade by the world's number 3 oil producer if they exceed the $60 per barrel price cap imposed by the group of 7 major democracies. Russia has found ways to evade the price cap through dark fleet tankers, which tamper with location data or transfer oil from ship to ship to disguise its origin. But those efforts add costs. Under the OPEC Plus deal, Russian Deputy Prime Minister Alexander Novik said Moscow will extend its voluntary cut of 500,000 barrels a day through next year, according to Russian state news agency TASS. But Russia might not be following through on its promises. Moscow's total exports of oil and refined products such as diesel fuel rose in April to a post-invasion of high of 8.3 million barrels per day. International Energy Agency said in its April oil market report. Yeah, man. Times are going to be tough. That's all I can say. Guess it's going to go back to those times people are going to be trying to, hate to say it, but there's going to be times where people are going to be stealing gas. It was that way for a minute at one point. I don't know if you remember those times that people were trying to steal each other's gas. Well, that's the end of the stream. Tell me what you think in the comments. All right. Like, share, comment, and subscribe. Let me know what you think in the comments section. What are your thoughts about this?